Welcome to another edition of Swerve with Me. This is a show where we have adult conversations for mature audiences only. I'm Miranda. It's always good to have you with us. As you come in tonight, is going to be a very interesting discussion that I am sure so many people out there will be able to benefit from, especially those young people and not so young that are in the church. And they've heard stories and they've had experiences that may have not been so favorable, but they've had opportunities for God to turn situations around and make it work for their good. And so we're going to give people a chance to come on in. You have a chance to share it. Go ahead and share the live stream to whomever in your family chats, wherever you are, because we want to let people know that tonight I will be talking to two young people who, in my brief time of spending with them, I see a lot of growth and maturity, and I'm really proud of what they are doing and the way that they are conducting their lives at this particular time. So tell somebody that I'm talking to Kylon and Latisha Andrews tonight, and if they know them, they better tune in. So go ahead as you come in. Good night, everybody. Tag somebody. Let them know that we are on the air and we are ready to have this discussion that I believe is going to be transformational. Okay, yeah, that's the word. That is definitely going to be transformational for those who would happen to tune in tonight. So come on in. Tell them I'm talking to Kylon and Latisha Andrews. I've known, I'm going to date myself and say I've known Kylon all his life. And if he's like 30 or 31, then that just makes me older. That's the best way I'm going to put it. Like, that just makes me older. And so honestly, it is such a wonderful pleasure to see him grow and develop into the man of God that he is, and the husband and the father and the professional man and the artist, and so many other things that I can say about him. But I remember vividly, I share this story fondly because I was at the time when I'm not sure exactly what role I was playing in, what role I wasn't playing in Jubilee Cathedral at the time, but I was definitely responsible for the media ministry. And Kylon, at age 10, I believe it was, told his mother that he wanted to be a part of that media ministry. And she came and had a conversation with me, and she was thinking he was too young. And I was like, come on down. If he's interested, then bring him along. And I'm so happy that she did, because he grasped and he learned. We used to like really train people, teach them how to use the camera, how to break it down, how to put it back together, angles and panning and all that stuff, along with his brother, I believe it was Kentrell. At the time, both of them worked with me in the media ministry, and we had a wonderful time just doing ministry. And for young men, guys, teenagers at the time, and preteens who were actually interested in not only being a part of ministry, but actually learning something new. That's what was so fascinating to me about it. And so I was very, very happy that they were on my team, and we did some pretty creative and wonderful things together. But tonight we're talking to Kylon Andrews and his wife Latisha in a different capacity, because we're talking about their life, some of their experiences, what they're doing today, and how God is really doing a wonderful work. So as you come in, tag somebody and let them know. So without further delay, I want to introduce and present to others Kylon and Latisha, or Latisha and Kylon, depending on who says it. Good night, guys. Welcome to Swerve with Me. Oh, let me get that mic. Let's see what happens.
Yes, awesome.
Good night, good
So,
night, good night.
so it's good to have you here. So if you're listening out there, let me know if you hear any feedback, because that's going to be important as we move along. So whoever's out there, let me know. So far, that we'd have some feedback. So I like to start the story from the beginning, guys. And this is going to be beginning from in each individual. Kylon, tell me a little about who Kylon is, and then we're going to go to you, Tisha. Tell us a little bit about who you are, your background, etc. So let's start from Kylon, son of the soil of Grand Bahama, and take it from there.
Uh, You all know
You all
I'm
know I'm
Kylon.
Kylon.
I'm
I'm
well, a lot of
a lot of
things.
things.
I'm a
I'm a
teacher,
teacher,
high school
school
teacher.
teacher.
I'm an
I'm an
artist,
artist,
post
post
visual
visual
and
and
audio.
audio.
Um,
Um,
father of
father of
two, two kids
two
that I
kids that I
love
love.
to death.
Yeah,
And
and
I
I
mean,
mean, you know.
I mean, Okay, take it away, Latisha.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yes,
I'm
I'm
Latisha.
Latisha.
I
I
am
am
this
this
wonderful
wonderful
man's
man's
wife,
wife,
lucky
lucky
wife.
wife.
Like my
Like my
mother too
mother
as
too as
well.
well.
I'm a
I'm a
teacher.
teacher.
I teach
I teach
preschool.
preschool.
Um,
Um,
I also
I also
like
like
photography as
photography as
well.
well.
And just
And
being
just being
creative.
creative.
So I
So I
love
love
writing
writing
songs
songs
and
and
poems.
poems.
So that's
So
my
that's my
forte with
forte and
fashion as
fashion
well.
as well.
Do you critique his work?
About as I
But
do.
I do.
I'll kind of
I'll
just
kind
look
of
and
just
be
look
like,
and be like,
okay.
okay.
Sometimes you gotta
Interesting.
understand,
Understand.
But he's an
But he's
excellent
he's an excellent
painter and
painter and
artist.
artist.
So I
So
have
I
no
have no
mistakes, but he
mistakes
does
with
it.
he
I'm
does it.
just
I'm
like,
just like,
okay,
okay.
nice to see.
Nice to see.
So, good night, Joba. If you're just joining us, I'm talking to Kylon and Latisha Andrews. We're going to talk about their life, their young adult life in particular, how they met, the things that happened, how they handled adversity and controversy, and what God is doing in their life at this time. So tag somebody and let them know we're on. So let's get into this. So Kylon grew up in the church. We came up in ministry together, even though, you know, you could be my kid, but working in ministry together. And here's the awesome thing about it. I want you to begin your part of the story by talking about the time in your life when you felt this call of God, because I mean, I didn't know too many young men at the time who popped up and said, "I'm going to Bible school." I still don't know too many who do today. And so let's talk about that journey for you. At what point, how old you were when you decided, you know what, I feel this call of God on my life, and I believe it's leading me to Bible school. So let's talk about that.
All right, for me,
All right, for
it
me,
was when
it was
Pastor
when
Winslow Johnson was at the church.
Pastor Winslow Johnson was at the church.
Like, he was a
He
very,
was a
very important figure in my
very
life at the
important
time
figure in my life at the time.
because I
Because
was always,
I was always,
I was always into
I
the
was always
Bible,
into the
but I
Bible,
just didn't have
but I
the
just didn't
guidance
have the
like I
guidance
wanted.
that I wanted.
And with him
And
being
with him being
around,
around,
like,
like
just looking
just
back on
looking
it,
back on it,
I could see the
I
way
can
that
see
I
the way
grew in
that I grew with
confidence,
confidence,
just in the way
just in
that
the way that
I
I
presented
presented
myself and the
myself
way
and the
that
way
I
that I
speak.
speak.
It was just
It was
that
just that
confidence I
confidence I
got from
got
him
from him
being
being
around, like
around,
just
like just
reassuring me that,
reassuring me that,
hey,
hey,
he let
you
me
let
know
me know
you did
you
this
did this
wrong,
wrong,
but this
but
is the
this
way
is
to
the
go
way to go
about it.
about it.
This is
This
just
is
being
just
like,
being like,
you was
you was
wrong,
wrong,
stop
stop
doing that,
doing that,
And
and
with that
with that
guidance, I
guidance,
was
I was
able
able
to
to
pretty much
pretty much
figure out,
figure
hey,
out, hey,
is this
is this
something I
something I
want to
want to
do?
do?
Is this
Is
something
this
I
something I
don't
don't
want to
want
do?
to do?
Because
Because
certain
certain
people
people
just
just
don't
don't
like that
like
correction.
certain
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 people don't
people
like
don't like
people
people
telling
telling
them
them
how to
how
be
to be
men.
men.
But
But
that
that
was
was
just
just
something
something
I had
I
that
had that
I
I
felt that need
felt
for,
the need for, you know.
He was
He was
God used him to give me what my heart was yearning for. And from there, God has always placed somebody in my life that would kind of direct me along that way. And that's strange because she could attest to that. God would always put
Mm-hmm.
somebody there to just help me along the way for moments when I get discouraged. Like I can't really talk to anybody, no matter where I go, no matter where I work. There's always somebody there that I can really talk to on that spiritual level who would actually understand the things that I'm dealing with and what I want to talk about. So that was one of the things that helped guide me towards Bible college because I was looking at other colleges, but I felt that tug to World Harvest. Not necessarily World Harvest, but just that tug to Bible college. And the thing is I was looking at World Harvest Bible College, and then the conversation came up for me to go to Fowler Christian College, not knowing that Fowler Christian College is the that was the name change from World Harvest Bible College. So is the way God worked in that because I was supposed to join the police force. I passed the test, the physical training test, the psychological test, and all that. But training was taking too long to start, and I was like, God, I really lost interest. I need to do something. And I decided I wanted to go to college. And right when I made that decision, the very next day, somebody wanted to meet with me with a scholarship to go off to school. And they would only let me go if I decided to go to Bible college.
So with there, hi, good night, Deborah. Thanks for that. They're still getting a little feedback, and people are saying they're not so clear. So we're gonna have to keep switching off and on, as we were doing before. So you felt this call to go to Bible college, and someone then a scholarship comes up. I mean, what are the chances of that other than it being divine intervention? That something like that would happen. So you made this decision to go to Bible college, and you get there. I'm going to bring you in soon, Latisha, because of course you play a pivotal role in all of this. But Kylon, so you get in. Good night, Minister Shay. She's here. Thank you guys for tuning in. Remember to tag somebody. So Kylon, you accept the scholarship to go. You believe this is God for sure. You want to go to Bible college. You get the scholarship to get in, and tell us about what it was like to transition from being this boy out of high school. Now you're on your own for the first time, basically, out of way, going to school. Hey, your mama said good night, Ethel. Good to see you. And on to Bible college, on to Bible school. So tell us, what was that like landing in Ohio for the first time, and when did you hit it? When did it hit you that this ain't home? This ain't home. But this is a whole new world. So let's talk about that.
For me,
Sorry.
yeah. For me, it was when it started to snow. And the temperature hit 40 degrees. I was like, hold up. No amount of clothes could make me feel as good as I want to feel right now. Because it was cold. And I was like, this is different. Even as simple as going to the store, like everything was it was a hustle. Because the people, yeah, it's a Bible college, but not everybody there, So even helping people out, get what they need. But when you need something, you ask them for help, and they act like they never saw you in life. So I was like, this is way different than Freeport. These people aren't as friendly and welcoming. Not that they were mean, but it's just it's a culture shock. It's not the bombers. I'm in the cornfields now, so it was something to get used to. But with change, you have to make your adjustments. You can't just sit there and complain about what you had before. So I went into it, tried to make the necessary adjustments, and got the hang of it. Mommy wasn't around no more, so I had to get it together.
So you get in and you find out, okay, this is a whole new world. I have to hustle more because I don't have mommy to run back to. You completed when you went. Let me roll it back a little bit. When you went into Bible school, did you have an end result in mind in terms of, once I get this degree, diploma, whatever it is, I want to do with this? What did you have in mind?
Didn't really have anything in mind. I didn't really have anything in mind because going there, I originally went to do youth ministry, but when we had to sign the papers to say what we want to do, I felt the Spirit leading me towards pastoral leadership. So at that point, I was like, maybe, and this is where I really could have used a mentor at that point, because at that time I was like, well, since I'm not doing youth ministry right now, I'm going to go into pastoral leadership. I just let God take it from here. Instead of me saying, well, still try to make plans, let God help you out with your plans, I was like, well, Just let it go however it goes. So that's pretty much how it was for me. I didn't really have any plans to say what would happen when I leave.
So that sounds pretty unusual to me. That you go into Bible school and not have a specific view, but then I do understand that. But it's, I guess it's a microcosm of life, which is a process. And sometimes you start certain things and you're not too sure, and then you veer to another direction and all that stuff. But you get through at least your first year. I want to talk about now and bring Latisha into this whole meeting, because you two met online, which is not unlike many modern day relationships where people meet online and somebody slides into the other person's DM, as they say, or their inbox, and you start talking. So let's talk about how did you meet? And let's let Latisha start the story, and then Kylon, you take for them. So you met online, but how did you meet online?
Yes, for me, it's always so funny telling this story because, I guess at that point in time, it kind of was unusual. It's like, okay, well, how did you two meet? Because we seemed like we met, like we knew each other for so long. And, just to say, well, how did you meet? It's like, Facebook. It sounds like, oh, okay. But, just, making a point on definitely, you have to thank God because it's been what, 10, 10 going on 11 years. And, God is definitely good for, keeping us in the midst of all things. But for me, at that point in time, I wasn't even looking for a relationship at all. I was so turned off from relationships. It's like, uh-uh. But I remember saying a prayer and I told God, I said, well, God, if, I guess the next person that enters in my life, I definitely want them, I want them to push me as I push them in God. I want them, if they see me falling off, to pick me up, and I do likewise for them. And well, maybe a few days later, because we met in a group called Show How You Feel, and a few days later, um, I made a post in the group, and he saw it, and he just looked at my DMs, and he's like, "Okay, well, I appreciate how you, stood up for yourself and everything." And he tried to correct me with something as well, but he was like, "Oh, and I think you're cute as well." And I'm like, okay. And then he was like, "Oh, I sent you a friend request, by the way." I'm like, okay, we'll see how this goes. I mean, like I said, I'm not looking for a relationship or anything, but okay, I guess it's nice to have a friend. But after just getting to know him a bit more and definitely seeing the traits that he had, that I really, I guess, just wanting I would say for me, I made like a mental note of the things that I wanted, um, out of the next person who I ever was to engage with, in a relationship with. That being, for me, they must have a godly standard. And that's something that I always made exceptions to in my previous relationships. And I'll be like, okay, well, they're checking the mark and everything else, but the godly standard, okay, well, okay, we'll work on it. It's something that can always be worked on. And of course, God was like, nope, nope, nope. And so definitely the basis of it, definitely, that was that he must have a godly standard and just have such a love and a strong desire for God. And for me, that was so important above anything else. And like I said, just getting to know him a bit more and talking a bit more back and forth. And eventually they came to Freeport to spend the summer with my sister. But of course, it was to spend time with him as well, just to see, how he is a bit more face to face. And I saw, well, wow, this guy's like checking all the marks and more, and so it's like, okay, God, is he really, someone who I'm supposed to be involved with? And I have such a toggle, just back and forth with God. I'm like, God, if he's for me, then you got to make this. as clear as day, or otherwise I'm not interested at all. And I kept begging God, if he's not for me, like snotty crying, oh my God, if he's not for me, I don't want anything to do with him. And God would just say, yes, he is, yes, he is, yes, he is. So I started to tell him as well, I believe God really has you for me. And at that point in time, he was like, oh, slow your roll,
Slow
But I'm
it
like,
down.
no, I can tell you for sure, like, you're supposed to be my husband. And yeah, that's how things started.
Okay, well, that was a lot. You said a lot right in there because I want to talk about the timelines because at the point when you two met online, Kylon, how long had you been in Bible school? And I gotta say that Latisha herself comes from a Christian home, and I believe you guys were Pentecostal. I happen to later on have met a brother of hers who we worked closely together, and I really he's like one of my favorite persons. A really good guy, but so she comes from this Christian background, and so do you. You guys connect in this group, and she makes this post. I'm just reiterating for those of you who are just joining. She makes some post in the group, and that caught your eye, and you decided to respond to it in her inbox, like just sliding in, because you had an ulterior motive. Let's just say what it was. Let's just call it what it was. So anyway, this began night a friendship of sorts, and you two continue to communicate. So obviously, you would have told her that you're in Bible school at the time, um, or were you? Yeah. Okay, give me a minute to turn the mic off.
Well, at that point, that was that March before I went.
Yeah.
We met that March, and I went to college in August. Yeah, so that was we just nonstop just communicating.
Yeah, we basically spoke every day.
Yeah.
Really, yeah. Up until that time when he went away.
All right. So at what point did you know? Let me ask you, Kyla, when you reached out to her, did you reach out with it at that point that this is somebody that I really want to get to know better? And were you even thinking like marriage along the line, or this was just somebody that's attractive to me at this point? She seems to have a little bit depth, so let's just talk.
Yeah, marriage wasn't on my mind. It wasn't. It wasn't. I just saw a pretty face. See him from the different posts I saw. Like seems like a cool person. She like kind of things I like anime and stuff like that. So yeah, be friends, and then from there the friendship developed into what it is now. But there were a lot of trials along the way. A lot of those.
Definitely.
But
So let's kind of get into the story. So you get into Bible college and you're communicating all along, and then she mentioned already that at some point she came to Freeport to meet you. I don't know if this is before he went to Bible college or before he went to Bible college. Okay, so you met him before he left, and you saw him, and you was like, oh yeah, okay. Yeah, I could really get into this now. In between the crying and asking God, is he the one, or all that stuff. So she was already convinced. Were you already convinced before he left that he was the one, Latisha?
Yeah.
Yeah.
As cliche as it sounds, yeah, because I just was praying earnestly to God during that whole time. And I said, well, God, I really didn't want to entertain any guys at that point in time. And, just definitely seeing, because I knew what I asked God for, or, would have desired, from someone. And just during that brief time from March until August, and, even afterwards, it was like, this is what I've been asking God for. And even in the midst of that, it's still like, okay, God, I really need you to show if this is really who you have for me. because I was just willing to just cut ties entirely, from just even communicating or anything. Like I was that serious about not wanting, I guess, to develop feelings for someone who this isn't going to be the next step with. Because even though I was so young, we were 19 at that time. Yeah, we were like 19 at that time. I just knew what I wanted. I like, and it's so funny to say, well, what does a 19-year-old know about what they want? Like you haven't experienced life yet. Like I just knew what I wanted out of someone who I wanted to be a husband at that point in time. And all I can say is God, And so just definitely just seeing the different characteristics, just his mannerism, the things that how he presented himself and everything, I was like, okay, God, like you're showing me all these things, but is this really him? And it just was a unanimous yes, yes, it is. But of course, it's a process to it. You have to go through a process now. And yeah, for sure.
So, so you were convinced him. Nah, I'm just trying to get through school at this point, really. I mean, at 19, really. Who's thinking about a serious relationship, really? But, so you go on, you go to Bible school, you continue to communicate. Obviously, you come home for Christmas, I suppose. And when you come home for Christmas, do you come home to Grand Bahama, or do you go to Nassau? Or let's pick it up. What was it like after talking for all of those months and not really seeing each other? Because I don't think it was any FaceTime back then at the time. So you're talking to each other continuously, but then you see each other this Christmas now at Kylon. During these months, are you growing stronger feelings towards her? What's happening as far as you're concerned?
Yeah. Well, going off to school, a lot of my problems, because I didn't really have the people who I would talk to about my problems, but they weren't around, so my problems kind of increased. Like it was just more of it in my face because there was less communicating with anybody. It was just me in my head all the time. So I I kind of lean on her more, and the problem was I lean on her more than I should have, because that was my time for me to be leaning more into God. But I only knew how to run the people, and through that semester, okay, came home in December, came on to Grand Bahama, and that's where my hypocrisy reared its ugly face. Because here I am presenting myself to the world, yes, man of God, no fornication. Come home.
Fornicate.
Yep. Just
Let's talk about that, because what you said is not uncommon in the church, because like you two aren't the first. It certainly ain't gonna be the last. You know what I'm saying? But and it's common, and there's a pressure, especially if you're a person with, no matter what age you are, and you are dating as a single person, and you are attracted to somebody. There is that pressure to want to, in your flesh, to express, to unite, to connect, to do whatever, and you, like millions of others, millions who have gone before you, succumb to that pressure. And we know it's so much. It starts in your mind. And if you don't keep that flesh under subjection and find other things to occupy that space in your mind, that these thoughts and about being with this person or connecting with this person, if you don't find something else to occupy that space in your mind, you are going to give in. You are going to fall. You are going to fornicate, as they say in the church. So I want to talk about that time for you. What were you thinking? What was going on in your head, other than I lusted and we just want to be together? But let's talk about that, because the act happened. She ended up pregnant. We know that. What I want to talk about more than anything else is, Kylon, for you this man of God who was in Bible school. You know, that's like the ultimate, like you studying the Bible, people thinking you probably gonna be a pastor someday, and then the word comes, you get a girl pregnant, and then being from Grand Bahama, and ain't nobody know who this girl is, right? So I really want to talk about the what you had to deal with in your own mind, and your connection with your God. And Latisha, likewise you, because you were a young Christian woman too at the time. So let's start with the thoughts in your own minds about, Lord, what have I done? How I can get over this? How I can tell myself? I mean, how am I going to tell my family? So each one of you, from your perspective, let's talk about after you find out you're pregnant. Let's talk about that conversation that you had with him, Latisha, and then Kylon, pick up with your emotions. How did you deal with God? How you tell mommy? And likewise, Latisha, how did you come from a two-parent home? How did you speak to your parents about what happened? So let's talk about you commit the act and then you find out you're pregnant. Take it from there.
Okay, for me, it was like, okay, you know, it was definitely scary. It was, definitely something that I wasn't expecting. I mean, you do what you do, but just the overall outcome of it, it um, definitely wasn't planned, but just having the belief, okay, well, this is what it is. Now you have to deal with this. It was now just a point of restructuring my, I guess, my thought pattern to say, well, okay, I need to prepare now for this process, something that I've never experienced before. And, on such a serious level, because this is a life now, that I'm bringing into this world. And so for me, it just was array of different emotions. Just, of course, being scared, being anticipated, being, I guess, just experience frustration on different levels. And of course, now having to tell him that, okay, this is what it is,
Mhm.
and okay, how are we going to manage move forward? But for him, of course, that was disappointing as it was for me as well, because this is something that we definitely didn't have planned or structured for our lives at this point. But of course, just coming to the realization again that, okay, this is what we have to deal with. Now what? And so we had to now go through this process of now what? And also just having to tell my mom as well. At least my mom, just funny enough, my mom, of course, she was disappointed, but she was so loving and supportive at the same time, which I really appreciated, because I just expected so much backlash and, see, this is what I told you, how some people can be like, I told you so. Like, it wasn't any of that. Like, she was just so loving and receptive and just understanding that, okay, this is what it is. We got to figure this out at this point. And so I'm definitely appreciative of her during that time. And yeah, now with him and his emotions. I guess you can go ahead.
For me, it was just a wild ride because here I am, just feeling like a disappointment, because it's like, okay, every I know what everybody was expecting of me, and there he goes messing up again. Kylon, you got this reputation for messing up, and you holding on to that tight. And at the time, it took me a while to. Well, I told my brothers first. Me, my brothers, and me, because we just have that kind of relationship where I could just let them know. They even if one thing I could say is even if they disappointed in me for something, I'd know it, but it wouldn't feel like it because we just. I mean, my sister too. Sorry, Kyle, I love you. We just have this relationship where it's like, okay, we know what's going on. Make no sense us just beating down on you for it. Yeah, they rough each other up sometimes, but we know it's always out of love. It's always out of love, and through that, just trying to work my way up to tell my mom took me a while because it's not like this was the first time she heard Kylon got a girl pregnant. You know, when I was 15, it was a whole other situation, but that's the past, and that's a part of the reason why I really felt like a failure because it's like, okay, you're repeating the same thing, but this time you off to school. You ain't got no money, but you around here doing this thing like you got some job or something. And for me, I I just went into a deep depression. It was to the point where I couldn't even stay awake. I'd sleep all day. The only thing I'd wake up to eat, I'd wake up to the bathroom to go bathe or whatever, and that's it. I just sleep. Like that depression had me out, no drive to do anything. At least I got my work done for school. That's the only work I got done. She barely heard from me, and I know that was another thing on her too, because it's like she need me now, but here I am. I can't even be there for myself. I couldn't even bring myself to pray. Thank God I had a roommate, Joshua Chan. He's from here as well. We went to the same school at the same time. Didn't know each other were going, but Josh was helping me out so much in ways he probably didn't even know.
Yeah.
So that's one person I really appreciate through this whole thing. And he just was telling me, some nights he would come in my room like 2 o'clock in the morning. He'd be like, okay, let's go pray, and stuff like that. He really tried pulling me out that slump. And it's just through situations like that. Even my professors, they spirit filled. It's like the Holy Spirit would use them in such a way. It's like they knew, but they didn't know. They just would say things as if they understood what was going on. I was like, this only could be the Holy Spirit. So that definitely was a way I got out of it. And then just keeping in communication with her, trying to be as transparent as possible. And, after finding out she was pregnant, and I'll be completely real with this because certain people kind of probably want to stand away from this part of it. I remember even asking her, would you consider abortion and stuff like that? Until I read this book called The Divine Revelation of Hell by Mary Kay Baxter. I read the whole book, and she touched on abortion on that book. And from I read that one part about abortion, that wasn't even an option no more. Because she made it clear about how God feels about abortion and that. So that was a lot just now, but
Yeah.
No, it took that. That's okay because I appreciate your candor and transparency because I could only imagine the weight of something like going through something like that, being in Bible school and understanding the expectations that are on you and what you place on yourself. How long? Because I want to get more back into the spiritual side because you talked about being depressed and your roommate who helped, who just was there. Thank God that was only God that placed someone like that in a room with you, knowing that he foresaw that you would go through this period and you would need a Joshua in your life at that point, to help to weather that. How long did it take you, Kylon, to, I want to say, reconnect with God? First of all, forgive yourself, and then to reconnect with God in a way that you were able to now not just be depressed and perhaps feel sorry for yourself, but now open up yourself to say, okay, I just helped create a life. Now I need to put my big boy pants on and start to think like a.
I just got to a point where I was like, okay, on one hand, you singing in church, every service come along, you singing a song about, I have faith in God. I have faith in God. And this is where God really started to show me myself. Because it's one thing to say you have faith in God, but then it's another thing to be like, man, I don't know what I can do. I don't know how we can do this. But you just finished singing you have faith in God. So
Hmm.
do you have faith in God or do you not? If you believe God is gonna provide for you the way the word says he would, why are you complaining about what you don't have or what you feel like you won't have? That's contradicting. That's not faith. So even with I know the people, even knowing the people would be disappointed in me, I was like, I really had to talk to God. It was more like, okay, they'll be mad, and then they'll get over it. The feeling is here now. You think it's gonna last forever? No. Get up, get going. You got work to do. You here. Going coming back home, we had a conversation about me coming back home where it was more like, okay, so if I come back home, what am I coming back home to be pretty much in the same position as I am now? Like I might as well just stay and get this education while I'm here so I could come home and put this to work. Not knowing you wouldn't really be able to put it to work till almost 10 years later after coming home. But it paid off.
Yeah.
You know, the relationships that I made while I was there, the connections, meeting people in West Virginia. To explain what happened during that time, it's almost hard to believe because I told people stories about what happened to me while I was there, and people think I'm lying. Like you can see the look on their face, like yeah, whatever. It's just like yeah.
So hold on. So yeah, I let's talk about some of those stories because I think it's important for people to understand that her being pregnant was just a part of the story of what you endured and what you had to encounter, and understanding now that I'm even more driven to get this degree or to finish this Bible school because now I'm going to be responsible. And at the time, you weren't even thinking about marrying right away as much as a child's getting ready to come. And I have to be in a position to help to provide for this child because she's in Nassau with her parents. And that's not her responsibility alone or her parents. It's actually my responsibility as the man. But in the midst of that, you're in Bible school and you're encountering some challenges just being a student in Bible school. So let's talk about what happened, what switched, and so you go and you enter Valor Christian College. That's what it was called at the time, formerly known as World Harvest. And you entered that school with a certain understanding of what would happen. But things quickly changed. So let's talk about that to add to the stress of you now having somebody impregnated and on your way to becoming a father, a young father.
Right, so that following summer, after she got pregnant, we received these letters from Homeland Security telling us that we would have to leave the school. Well, no, not just leave the school, leave the country. And we were trying to figure out what was going on. So we had a conversation with the current dean of students. I can't remember what his position was at the time, but he was letting us know that there's a problem where the school, because the school was at a different property and the school had a different name, they changed the name of the school and they changed the address. So our passports reflected the old school, World Harvest Bible College, on a different street versus Valor Christian College on Gender Road. And because that was giving us problems coming back, that was like a red flag to the government. So they came, they did their investigation, and they was like, this isn't valid. This isn't a school. The school isn't registered. So they they got on the school's case. They said that this can't work. So the school, they told us that they would have to let us go. But the dean of students, he said, y'all paid a lot of money to come here. So let me see what I can do to make sure y'all can stay. So he got us sorted out with another school. They transferred over the funds and the credits to Ohio Christian University. And we did that. No, I skipped a lot just now. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when they told us we'd have to leave, it was kind of sketchy because they said, okay, we'll give y'all a few, let y'all stay for the summer, then y'all would have to go. So with me not working, not having anything to do, I asked them if there's any way we could just make some money while we're here. And they said, yeah. So they gave us jobs. They gave me a job at the warehouse, um, just working, just packaging the Bibles. I think at the time, Rod Parsley made the contending for the Faith Bibles with the daily devotions in it. And we would work 14 hours a day sometimes because there was so much Bibles on just being sent out to the airport or wherever else. And it was like that for 2 months. And after that 2 months, I asked them for my money, and they said that they had no records of me working. And I'm like, even if you don't have records of me working, you saw me work. The manager is there. He could testify. He could let you know that I was working every day because I couldn't work if he wasn't there.
Right.
So even with that, it was like they're paying about $10 an hour at the time. Didn't see a dime of that. I didn't see a dime of it, and they just kept giving us a runaround. And after that, they put us in the office saying, "Well, now that y'all have to leave," they didn't want anybody in the church to know what was going on. So they put us in a meeting. They said that they feel like they've done enough to help us, even though we helped them and didn't get a thing. They said they felt that we did enough to help. They did enough to help us, and they feel like they shouldn't have to help us anymore because we can make it on our own. They said, well, at this point, you could stay here and do whatever you want to do, or we could buy you a ticket to go home. But within myself, I was like, God, you brought me here. I know you told me to come here, so I'm going to stick it out. So that really showed me how people like to talk but don't really mean what they say, because they'd be like, man, if you need anything, we're here for you. I called, the school kicked us out, we had nowhere to stay. I asked the people, my old bosses and stuff like that. But I could understand him. He don't really know me on that level. He had a brand new wife, a young daughter, and I could understand that. You don't want somebody in your house like that. But there'd be other people, they'd be like, man, we got you. You need something, we got you. I called, say, hey, I don't have a place to stay. Can you help me out? And they said no. It was no concern really. Say, sorry, can't help you out. So for a week, we were pretty much homeless, to be quite frank. They let us keep our luggage in the school, in the rooms that we slept in, but we just couldn't be in there with the luggage. So for that week, my roommate, he slept in our friend's car because our friend was living in the dorms too. It wasn't much he could do to help us out. So he let my roommate sleep in the car. I still had the key for my room, and like I said, they tried to keep it under wraps so nobody could really know what's going on. So the students didn't know we got kicked out. So what I would do at night before they locked the doors, I would walk in and make it seem like I'm supposed to be there, walk straight to the room with my luggage and go to sleep, and then be out first thing in the morning, which was going to be pretty problematic if I got caught. But, it's trying to survive. And God really worked it out. Within that week, we got a luxury apartment. Everything was good to go. That shouldn't happen because, for one, we already weren't supposed to have bank accounts. We got started out with bank accounts. Yeah. We got a job working for this company that builds stages for concerts for like whenever celebrity is coming in. And God just worked it out to make sure that we could keep ourselves while we were there. But
so you're going through all of this trauma. You're a student at a school that doesn't exist anymore. They didn't do the paperwork to get you properly enrolled in the school. They kick you out. they transfer you to another school, you don't have any place to stay, then you finally get into the school meanwhile, so you're coping, trying to make money just to survive where you are. So there's still really nothing as far as Latisha, where I get Nadia from, Latisha is concerned. There's still nothing. So you know he's going through all of this at the time because he is communicating with you. But yet, how are you feeling? Because I'm sure there must have been times when you just feel like you were in this alone. And how are you going to make it through? So let's talk about how did you process all of this that was happening with him?
Oh, for sure, it was stressful. So I think the word stressful is an understatement for sure. Just and then just being a caring person that I am, and knowing that he was going through all this, and there was literally nothing I can do other than pray. You know, it definitely was a lot because here it is. I guess the father of my child now is homeless, having to go through all this, and it just seemed like a nightmare. If you think about it, it literally feels like a nightmare to see how it just appears as though your life is just going downhill. It's like, a snowball just going down, just getting bigger and bigger with all these different oppositions now that you're facing. And just in the midst of it all, even though it was stressful, just having to bear, I guess, burdens on each side, it just was a matter of being prayerful. And I can truly say that that's what kept both of us during this, during that time, that just being prayerful, being consistent, just knowing that in spite of, you literally had to take on a in spite of attitude about it. And just knowing that in the midst of things, God, God wouldn't allow things to happen for no reason. Like, in spite of whether it looks bad, no matter how bad it looks, whether it's good, bad, whatever it is, God doesn't allow things to happen just because. Like, no, there's a purpose and a plan behind everything that God does. And so just taking on that mentality that in spite of God, you're in control. In spite of God, I know that you're still leading us and keeping us through all of this. In spite of, you're going to make a way. That's just the mindset that we had to take on. And sure enough, God was a keeper and still is a keeper, in the midst of things. Because as bad as that situation would have seemed during that time, to know that, just things worked out the way that it did, that he was able to find a home and was able to, whether it was transferring to another college during that time, like all these things, you still have to look at the good in the midst of it all to know that, hey, God is not finished yet. God still has a plan and a purpose for you in the midst of things. And yeah, that's what I had to take on.
So let's speed up the story a little bit. You mentioned that you was able to get a job with this company that was building like stage sets and lighting and all that kind of stuff. You ended up in West Virginia with this company and in this home, and during this period that you're with this company, did you have the baby yet, Latisha, or were you still pregnant? But I know you had an opportunity to come up and to visit at one point, and to meet the people, because it was this house with multiple people. It was like a mansion with so many different people in it. But it was a place of refuge at that point for Kylon to be able to have a place to lay his head and to work and earn some money and get himself together while he was waiting for school to reopen that fall. So talk about a little bit about being able to come over and to visit with him for a while.
Right. Yeah. That's September 11th. We actually had our son Israel, and during that time, you would have met them by September.
That was
You would have met them over
shortly
the
after.
summer.
Yeah,
Over the
yeah. I
summer.
didn't go until like I think that was October.
Yeah. So with them being able to go down to West Virginia and just meeting these group of persons, and they, just thank God you I am so grateful for them, and just to see that, they just have such a loving heart towards young people and wanting to see them not only just strive in whatever that they do, but just pushing them to pursue ministry. That was the basis of them taking in people just for, young people, and just being able to use their talents to, go out and minister the gospel. And just being able, while he was there, being able to communicate with, um, that's Roger and Tanya, Tonda, yeah. Just being able to be in communication with them and other friends that he would have met during that time as well. You know, to know that they went out of their way to say, well, I guess know of our story, and just to say, well, hey, well, why don't you just come over? And it's like, I don't have the funds. Like, I'm living at home with mom and dad. I haven't secured a job as yet because it was just so difficult to be able to find a job. Just having a newborn and being so young, persons see that as a liability. And so it was just so difficult just being able to find a job during that time. And so it was like, okay, well, how am I going to come over? They're like, don't worry about it. We'll pay for it. Just, try to see if we could get your son's passport together and everything will be covered. And it's like, okay, but I wasn't sure still because I still had the thought in my mind, I really don't want to be a burden on anyone. I already feel, still feel like a sense of a burden, but my parents having to not only take care of me, but take care of my child as well. I, these people are still kind of strangers, even though, we've developed a relationship, they're still a stranger, to a certain capacity. I really didn't want to be a burden on anyone. And so I just prayed, I said, God, if it's really for me to go, then you really have to show me a sign. And it was during a prayer meeting that, these scriptures were handed out. And the scripture that came to me was, but my God shall supply my needs according to his riches and glory. And I said, okay, well, if you're going to supply my needs, then I'm going to trust you and hold you to that. And so, yeah, I had to trust and hold on to God through that. And so we planned it secretly. He didn't know anything about it
at all.
So our friends, we just were like, okay, book the tickets. They booked the tickets, and here I am traveling now. It was like a 10-hour flight from Nassau, have to lay over into Atlanta and then over to Columbus, Ohio, just to meet him and, just to be with him now, with him seeing his son face to face for the first time. And that was such an emotional day. That was such an emotional day.
Let's talk about that. What was it like? Because she'd gone through this entire pregnancy, and you weren't able to be there. She had the baby, you weren't able to be there. So what was it like seeing her and your son, especially your son, for the first time?
So at this point in the story, I wasn't in West Virginia anymore. This was when I went back to finish my last semester at Vala.
Mm-hmm.
Just after they got everything sorted out with the government. I still can't explain the feeling because I didn't expect it. Because all right, me and Josh, we left the school at the same time when we got our apartment, still roommates. So when they were going to pick her up, they were trying to they did their best to throw me off. So they told me something like, hey, we can't find our bike. And it's like, I think the Mexicans stole it because Josh is from Guyana, but he looks Mexican. So they just cracking jokes on me like, I think the Mexicans stole it. And I was like, hold up. Like, I can't let y'all do my boy like that. Like, why would he take your bike? So they mean, that's what they said, and it worked. Because here I am kind of angry with them because they making comments like this. And then they finally came to see me or whatever, walk out the door.
Hi.
And she's standing there with Izzy, and I'm like, I couldn't even talk. I just was looking like, wow, like, finally. And it was crazy because I would always talk to Izzy over the over the webcam, whatever, call me on Skype or whatever. And he never saw me face to face. So when he first saw me, he was crying because I wanted to hold him. But after a while, when he recognized my voice, the way he opened up and just came to me, I was like, this it's got to be the best feeling in the world. But yeah, that's how that went down. It's still a emotional thing because, like you said, at that moment I didn't know they were coming. It was good, and through that, God showed His faithfulness too because it was even though they came, I was like, I am very appreciative of this, but y'all know I don't have a job no more.
Yeah.
So y'all bring them down this way. Right now, I'm not working, but that's where even though you kind of lose sight of God, that proves that God doesn't lose sight of you. Because at the time, I was just panicking because I'm like, all right, all the money that I work for is pretty much gone now. Here she is, here he is. He needs stuff. He needs food, he needs diapers. I don't have the money. She don't have the money. And he's just sitting down and just sitting there like, I don't know what to do. Like at that point, I was almost in tears. I'm like, I never wanted it to be like this. So we went to church that night. The same pastor, and this is how God works. The same pastor of the church that we went to in West Virginia, he just happened to open up a church right down the street from where I was living in
Columbus.
in Columbus.
Yeah.
So we went to church that night. We we just went to church after the service. We stood around and talked to everybody, and the pastor's wife, Miss Kylon, she came and she talked with us. She saw Izzy. She was like, "Who is this?" And I let her know. Say, "This is my son, Izzy. This is my girlfriend." And we let her know his birthday was in like 3 days.
Yeah.
It was in like 3 days, and she was like, "What you doing for his birthday?" And I let her know. I was like, "Nothing, because we ain't got nothing right now." so So she said, you can't let his first birthday go like that. So she said, hey, coming right back. So I said, coming right back. She came back and she put something in my hand. I didn't want to just look at it in her face, so I just put it in my pocket. So so I wait till she walk away. Man, I pulled that out of my pocket. She put $200 in my hand. And I'm like, at that point, I was almost in tears again. I was like, this gotta I'm crying too much now. like, like it's just and things like that kept it was happening time after time. That's where I learned not to worry because it's like how many times does God have to show Himself faithful to you for you to realize that He is faithful, you know? So through that I just learned just rely on God, let God be God.
Wow. So you finally get to see your son and hold him and that bonding connection. And then subsequently, you said that was your last semester there. And so right after that, you return home. You return home. Wait a minute.
So
Yeah.
they didn't let I thought that was my last semester. They it was supposed to be, but they didn't let me know that the course that I took it was 5 semesters versus 4.
Mhm.
So after that, I just let them know, okay, I'll do my last semester so I could go. And after the last semester, I had a tragedy in the family. My cousin, who I was closest to at the time, 5 days before my graduation, he passed from a heart attack on the basketball court. And he was only 20. But me and him, you inseparable. So that depression that God brought me out of almost pretty much just just swallowed me up again. But even but like I said, God walked with me so closely the whole time that I was able to pull myself back out of it. Well, God pulled me out of it. I can't take credit for God's work. But even from there, graduated, stayed 2 weeks. I probably shouldn't have done it, but I stayed 2 weeks to avoid the funeral. I couldn't do it. and then came home, stopped in Nassau first, stopped to them
Yeah.
for about a week, and then came back home to Freeport.
So after all of this now, you back home and you're thinking now, was marriage like the next step obviously to having this child? And no, okay. So so after you finish school, I the next step was like, okay, get a job or something and start paying some bills. I mean, let's talk about what happened and how long between when Izzy is born and you two actually marry. Let's talk about that.
It was five, right? It was
Yeah.
five when we got married.
Yeah.
About five, yeah, 5 years. 5 years in between. But coming home from school, finding a job that paying you something that you could actually live off, that's not the easiest task in Freeport. So that was pretty much what made it so long for the wedding to happen because I know to her it was like, okay, why are you stringing me along? Like, getting married or not? And I'm like, as a man, you gotta understand. If I can't do for you, what you tying yourself down to. So it was a bit of a conflict there, but he said God worked it out. God made a way. That's why we ended up I ended up moving to Nassau. Then we got married, and then Nassau just better jobs. We finally got a job at Bahama, and I was working the fusion at the same time. So the money was good, and she had a job at a preschool, so it was pretty good. And then COVID ruined everybody plans. Everybody, yeah.
So you marry, you start building this life together. COVID happens, and you end up back home in Grand Bahama, obviously. That was just trying to recover from Dorian. Then here comes COVID, and so the challenges of that, and trying to raise, of course, a son, and but you weather that too. You get through that. You both have jobs. You just had a baby recently, Isabella. Such a beautiful name. So let's speed up the story and talk about all that you enjoyed, going through the pregnancy out of wedlock, even the challenges, I'm sure, from family, what people would have said, what they may not have said, all that kind of stuff. What is the thing, each one of you can answer this individually, what kept you in your sound mind? Kylon, what keeps you, and then Kylon for you, what keeps you out of depression, no matter what challenges are happening? And Latisha, what keeps you in your sound mind, even as you progress and move along as a young couple just now trying to raise two small children? So let's talk about that.
Well, for me, it's just definitely just holding on to God's promises. I feel as though just from just being pregnant and everything, just from that time in our lives, just knowing and proving God in the midst of that, and just seeing how He's faithful. He's definitely a keeper of His word, and whatever promises He say, they are sure. Like it says, His promises are yea and amen. And so, just knowing that God has our back in the midst of it all, that definitely strengthened my faith to know that in spite of whatever challenges or whatever stage and level we are in life, definitely one, and it goes right back to, I guess, the foundation of what I expected from both of us, that being that we must both have a strong foundation in God. And definitely I can say that that has kept us, just being able to build off of that is what kept me during all of this. And even now, it's like, again, his whatever promises that he has assured us with, whatever he's said so far, he's definitely fulfilling in our lives, whether it may happen tomorrow or a few years from now, definitely whatever God has said, they are definitely going to happen. And so that for me is what keeps me grounded. So yeah.
All right. Well, for me, what keeps me out of depression is, I mean, is I love to explain more, but all in all, God. Um, Depression. I had to come to realize what depression is to really get past that. Depression is a pride issue because the whole time I was depressed, and I to be honest, I went to school with the struggle of depression. It just got heightened when I went there. Um, I Depression is like, why is this always happening to me? Why are they treating me like this? Everything is me. Like God, just to put it in a nutshell, God was like, okay, you need to get over yourself now. like like the show is more life than what's happening to you. Either you let life happen to you or you happen to life. Life is more than the struggles you face. So for me to stay out of it, what I would do, I mean, the things I do, I make when I make music or even when I paint, my music would always be a reflection. I put my emotions, my heart into my music. Whether and I used to get depressed about that because I'd be like, "What if people don't like my music?" Just doubting myself, just afraid of rejection. But now I'm like, I don't care. This is me. If you don't like me, go your way then. I good. you know. And I put my music out there for people to listen to. If it's good, if it helps you, then bless God. Because I want no credit for it. I just believe that from, if you want to stay out of depression, get in the presence of God. Learn God. Get to know God. You could read your Bible or you could study your Bible. That's how the word gets in you through studying. You reading, you just looking at words. Studying, you putting it in you. So I learned to study the Bible. I learned to get in the presence of God. I learned to let out what's on my mind. If you keep that bottle in, the bottle could only hold so much water. And like I say, it's just like I said, at the end of the day, what keeps me from depression is God. I didn't do it. I didn't do it without him, and I can't do it without him.
That's really good. It feels good to hear the level of maturity that you two have, not because of your age or even experience, but because of your relationship with God and your perspective in the way how you have handled adversity and the way you continue to handle the things that you're challenged with. So you're both teaching now. Latisha, you at the preschool level, and Kylon, I don't know what level you're teaching at, but the question really is, what is it that you want to pour most into your students other than getting through the curriculum? When somebody passes through Mrs. Andrews' class and Mr. Andrews' class, what is it that you really want to leave with these children?
For me, just definitely knowing that, everyone doesn't come from the same home or the same structure home. And sometimes, even with church, not everyone goes to church either. That means your child isn't going to church either. And so the only time they'll probably get to hear about God is probably if I share something with them. And so whether that's saying a prayer with them, if they do something wrong, just, teaching them that, hey, you shouldn't do this, or, this is the outcome of that. And even from so young, because kids nowadays, they are so intelligent. Even at the age of 1 years old, they are so intelligent and wise during this time. And so they can understand if you tell them certain things. And so for me, definitely, if you come into my classroom, you're going to hear me saying something about God. All day, you're going to hear me say something about God. And so for me, it's just a matter of just how it's important to lay that foundation of ABC and knowing your vowels, and whether it's reading, however, like these are the first steps that you take to move on forward in life. And, I guess getting ready for elementary school and however, but definitely I'm setting a foundation as well, at least because I've seen it time and time before where because my mother, she's a teacher as well, and there's persons as old as me or even older who would have approached her now in her day saying, "Hey, I remember you. You're Miss Hamilton. I remember you from preschool, and I could thank you so much for everything that you have done for me. You've definitely made such an impact in my life from the age of 3, 4 years old." And so, for me, if that can happen then with a child, then I can do and make it for the kids too, in that sense. So
All right.
yeah.
With the kids that I deal with, um, I teach high school, so from grade 7, grade 12. But what I try to leave with them, I I make sure I don't forget what I struggle with in school, and I try to be to them what Pastor Johnson was for me at the time, because I just I just be real with them. Like they come to talk to me, oh, Mr. Andrews, I like this girl or whatever, and I don't be like, focus on your schoolwork. I do tell them to focus on the schoolwork, but you can't ignore the fact that they teens, the hormones going crazy. They develop feelings for one another. So instead of telling them no, don't do this, you guide them. You still tell them don't do it, but at the end of the day they'll do
Yeah.
whatever they want to do. But you still guide them through it. And I try to let them know because they have this thing where you come to school wearing a certain type of shoe or something, they trying to tease you all day. And I'm like, because I had to catch one of the boys the other day. I was like, you teasing them about them shoes. You can't even buy them shoes right now. Kill that old joke altogether. It wasn't even funny anymore because I'm like, you teasing them. You can't even go. I was like, go to the store and buy a book right now. He can't. I'm like, you teasing them about the shoes you have on. You can't even afford the book to write in. I'm like, kill that. Because nobody here is better than anybody else. And I know how much they used to keep me back in school when people used to tease me. Like I used to get mad, but I was a silent mad. And that was a lot what caused my depression because I never used to express myself.
Mhm.
So I I I'm teaching them how to express themselves without making a whole big show out of it. And I've seen a few of them change. I be extremely prayerful about it because dealing with kids, you have to deal with it prayer because I mean with prayer. Honestly, it feels more like ministry than being a teacher.
Mhm.
So I stay prayerful about it, and thank God for my bosses. They spirit filled, they God loving people. So even even sometimes when I deal with stuff with the students, they would be able to see it in the spirit, and they'll pull me aside and be like, "Okay, let's try handle this like this," because God would just show them certain things what would be impossible for anybody to know how to not being for God, and it's just amazing to be honest. It's amazing. I love my kids.
Wonderful. That just warms my heart, the approach that both of you have to dealing with the kids that God has entrusted in your care. Let's bring it now to Izzy and Isabella. Let's talk about why did you name him Israel? Why Isabella? And then talk about, especially from the perspective of Israel now, this personality that's coming forth and who do you see inside of him right now?
You can answer about his name.
All right. Well, for Izzy, I chose his name because at the time I was reading a lot on Egypt and the Israelites and God doing all He could to help them. And even though God was doing all He could to help them, they still couldn't grasp it. And I felt like that was me at the time. And Israel, the person Israel, was blessed by God. So for me, just all I could hear was Israel for the name. Because in my mind, I was like, boy, this is an old name for for this boy. But that's what I felt, and I just went with that because it meant a lot to me at the time too.
And with Isabella, because initially we were like, let's stick with the I theme. We're like Italy, and we're like, nah.
You said it.
We're like Israel and Italy, and it's like, ah. But one day you just click, it was like Isabella, and it's like Isabella. Okay, well, let me look up the meaning of Isabella. I always wanted for our kids to have a godly name, because I feel as though your name, it carries, it's you. When someone
Mhm.
calls you, your name, you have to identify by that name. And so Isabella means, God is my oath. And so for me, I just wanted to instill in her, I guess, as she goes through life now, that I guess you're in debt to God. Always remember to put God first. And so for me, that's why I wanted to name her Isabella. But just, I guess, going off now on their personalities, they are two different sides of the coin. They are definitely two
Boy,
different sides of the coin. Izzy, he's more, I guess, quiet and reserved. He definitely has more of his personality, where he's more quiet. He loves art. He loves building things. He's definitely gifted with his hands.
mhm.
The things that he built, it's like, okay, like he can, like, airplanes and just building structures. Just seeing it one time, he creates these out of these blocks and just paper, and it's like, it's a lot to take. And it's like, okay, like, I'm so excited to see where he's gonna progress in life with that. And Isabella, Isabella is definitely more of a wild card.
Mhm. Mhm.
For me, growing up, I was shy, and you would get your report card back, and you'll always get like a little progress report to say, well, how the child has been in school. I'm always like, oh, Latisha, is such a quiet person, and but definitely later on in life, I just getting to know myself. I'm definitely more forward now in life, and the way I approach things, and that's
That's Bella
definitely
now.
Isabella.
That's Bella right now.
She is not afraid of anything. So she's just a burst of energy, and definitely has her own personality, but then she's also very observant as well. She reminds me a lot of myself. I typically observe things before, I guess, knowing how to interact or approach things. I'm very observant. And that's the type of person she is. She gives you this look from head to toe. Sometimes she'd be like, just looking at you from head to toe. And I'm like, Bella, you can't do this.
Any stranger come by, she look you head to toe.
Head to toe.
Like, who are you?
But she's definitely a quick learner because of that. And, she takes in information so quickly. And it was just amazing to see their different personalities. And I guess now just expecting to see, well, okay, what God is going to mold out of them. But just definitely just being prayerful, keeping them covered, because it's just so many things that's happening in life now. At the end of the day, God still has to be, just as it is with our relationship, so should it be in their lives as well, that, God is the foundation of everything in their lives. So it's just now a matter of, okay, let's see where they're going to go, but definitely having God with them as well. I instill that in them all the time. So, yeah.
This has been an amazing conversation. We're nearing the end of it. And I want to say, first of all, thank you both for your willingness to do this, for your openness, for your transparency, for sharing a piece of yourselves with us, and for all who would actually watch this in the days and weeks and months ahead. Oh, Lovely K says your child reminds me about my 8-year old son named Jonathan. Veronica says Ronnie. That's Ronnie says, love my babies. And I just see a lot of amens and blessings and good evenings. But I'm proud of both of you and the life that the godly life that you are building for yourselves and for your children. And and I think you've done your parents proud if they were to watch the show and to hear, I mean, the level of growth. I am really godly proud of the evolution that I'm seeing. And no doubt as you continue on this path of really becoming all that God wants you to be in your individual lives and in your lives as a couple, so that your kids have a demonstration of what a godly marriage looks like and what people look like who go through, who are able to communicate. And Kylon, I know you're just going to be an awesome, and you are an awesome father because of, and not because I'm partial to you, because I am, but unashamedly, but but actually because you're now using your experiences as a young man to pour into young people. So Izzy, oh come on, Izzy has such a great advantage, which he'll come to appreciate someday, because sometimes you get that inner rebellion at some point, but he'll come to appreciate it someday, and that's the point, because of the training that you two are doing even from now. And even Bella with her little two that are already beginning to manifest, she'll be able to appreciate it too. I lovely couple. Russo says lovely couple, all the best to them. I'm not quite sure what Ethel, what you're saying. Oh, I get it. Coming from a single home. Yes, big up to Ethel. Yes, ma'am. I see you. Loud and clear. Yes, ma'am. Coming from a single home, definitely you did an amazing job. No doubt about it whatsoever with all of your children. And we thank God for you, Ethel. We thank God for you. So thank you once again for your transparency, your willingness to share a part of your life that someone may be able to connect with, who may watch this show and say, hey, if them two could get over it and get past it and work their way through it, then I can do the same thing. And that's why we do these shows week after week, talking to people who have overcome challenges and are not afraid to show their scars as you've been and to speak your truth. And I'm so happy that you're at that place in your life where you're open to share your truth so that somebody else may be blessed and encouraged. So thank you so much for swerving with me. Until next week, everybody have a wonderful night.